Hello students, I wanted to make a quick video to discuss some commonly missed questions in the quiz. There were 4 questions that less than 20% of the students got correct, and I reviewed those questions and I curved the quiz subsequently by 4 points. So this brought the class average up to a C from a 71, and also I want to clarify those concepts. So let's do that in this video. Okay, so in this first question, new closely related species which reconnect over part of their range may interbreed and produce infertile offspring. False. This question could be answered true or false from my perspective. So closely related species that might have a reconnection in their geographic range, this might indicate that the speciation process was incomplete, and so they were just distinct populations, not new species. And in this case, genetics could inform this inquiry. Sometimes scientists debate whether or not species or populations of individuals are of the same species or related species. But what this question is really driving your mind to think about is the concept of a hybrid, that closely related species could produce offspring, but that offspring would not be fertile. And that is the case in the majority of hybrids, although there are some hybrids where the offspring are fertile. So these are really gray areas, so let's just throw this question out. But I hope my comments are informative for you. Now, let's go to this question here. Genetic drift occurs when a population of organisms which normally don't travel great distances, like fruit flies, float on a tree branch or a piece of fruit across an ocean barrier to colonize a location. This question's just kind of crazy. Genetic drift usually does not relate to genes drifting across the ocean. Sorry, I'm having a hard time not laughing about it. It's just a dumb question, and I would argue that it is scored wrong. Um, Other problems with this question, fruit flies don't live that long, so the idea that they could float across an ocean is really kind of crazy. A better example would be, that you have a vessel, like an ocean vessel, that moves across great waters, and organisms are stuck to the bottom of it, and you can bring them to new lands to colonize with that species. Or like in the Great Lakes, the idea of the zebra mussels. There's lots of examples, but fruit flies floating on tree branches, that's totally insane. If a fruit fly did float on a tree branch to a new island, to colonize that island, that would be called the founder effect. Okay, moving right along. Okay, an individual evolves by natural selection when its traits, such as strong leg muscles in alpine cows, are selected for by its environment, which in this case is the mountainous terrain in which it lives. Again, really don't like this question. It kind of is an analogy to the idea that giraffes are stretching their necks, Lamarck's theory, which was disproven. The idea that you have strong leg muscles. It's not that you can stretch the neck and cause an evolutionary change. What we need to keep in mind, and most of you reflected this knowledge in your open response quiz questions, is that what would actually be happening in this situation is that an organism that was more fit, perhaps because it has strong leg muscles, would live long enough to reproduce. Therefore, its genes would be left in the next generation, and it would be contributing its genes to the next generation. And if a bunch more strong-legged organisms had genes left in the next generation, then there could be a genetic drift towards strong leg muscles. But in this case, It's really that weird gray area where it's not that the giraffe stretches its neck, it's just that the giraffes that can eat more survive longer and reproduce. And so if we fail to describe those intermediary steps, then we're putting this evolutionary causation on the wrong feature. Okay, one more question. 22. Taxonomy is the study of evolutionary relationships or taxa between groups of organisms. So one of the most complicated things is all of these words to talk about classifying organisms. So taxonomy is the order, division, and naming of organisms. This term is really quite broad. Phylogeny relates to the evolutionary history of a species. The system of systematics classifies organisms and determines their evolutionary relationships. Phylogeny and systematics are very similar. And then there's also another one that's not on this slide, cladistics. And cladistics is specifically classifying and depicting through trees the relative time in which the evolution or the speciation occurred. Okay, so those were the questions that I thought were quite complicated, only in the fact that there is too much interpretation to be accomplished in a quiz like this. Please continue to bring me your questions, and I will do everything I can to answer them.